Hi, Shelley from Spin Cushions here. Today I'm going to show you how to make these little motifs and join them to make up our Destiny blanket, inspired by Destiny the whale shark in the Finding Dory DVD. All the pattern details are on my blog, spincushions.com. So, all we need is two different colours, so let's get started with our lighter yarn. Sorry, it's a bit caught up. There we go. Start by attaching our yarn to our hook with a slip knot. So I just wind the yarn around my fingers, cross it over, put my thumb on the cross, flip over my hand, poke my hook under that front loop, bring the back loop to the underneath it, and then pull the two tails. And then we have a slip knot. Okay, the first thing we need to do is to chain 3. So yarn over from the back to the front. 1, 2, 3. And that takes the place of our first stitch. That counts as our first stitch. We're going to need 12 stitches in a circle to make our first round. So the next thing we need to do is make 11 treble crochet stitches, UK terms, or double crochet stitches, US terms, into this little the first chain we did. So just into that hole there. Sorry, I'm going to start that again. Into that little hole there. Right, so that's our first treble, but it's actually our second stitch. So that's 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. Oops. 10. 11. 12. Okay, so now we need to, that's the only round we're doing with this colour, cut our yarn. Oops. We're going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain. So you can see this big V here, that's our first real treble stitch. So we want to go into that little loop to the right of it. We insert our hook just through one little loop of the yarn, put our yarn over, pull it through and pull it through. That's a slip stitch. We've joined our circle around. Now we just poke that cut end through that loop, pull it tight. Now what we're going to do with the next round, so we don't have to sew in our ends, we're going to crochet over these ends, but we need to get that center end up to the edge. So what I've been doing is insert my hook through the back of the stitch, up through into the middle of that V at the top, thread my needle. You could thread your needle first, doesn't really matter. This needle's terrible. There we go. Pull it up and that's it. So that's our first little circle. Now when I'm making this blanket, I tend to do batches of 10. So I'll make 10 of these, then I'll go on, make and square them off, and as I square them off I'll join them together. So we end up with strips of 10, and then we join those 10 into a blanket. So I'll show you that a little bit later. So now we're on to our pretend I've made 10. On to our next colour. Now, I've got a trick to show you of how to attach your colour, your new colour. So again, we're going to attach our yarn to our hook with a slip knot. Now, I'm going to put my finger, hold on to that loop. Sorry, wobble the table a bit. I'm going to hold on to that loop on there. I'm going to do a yarn over. Now, so that we can work over these tails the best way, we're going to, can you see our join here? That's the first stitch to the right of the join, the second stitch to the right of the join. This third stitch to the right of the join is where we're going to attach our yarn. So just go under both loops. We've already put yarn over. We're just making a treble stitch as you normally would. It's just we've got to hang on to that first bit. Yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2. And there we go, we've got a first, instead of starting with chain 3 as we normally would to get up to the height, we've started with a real stitch. So that's really cool. So now we've made our first one. We need to make 2 more stitches in exactly the same space. So yarn over. So we're doing 3 stitches in that first space. I'll explain that. We'll come back at the end and we'll join there in a moment. Now the next 2 stitches we're going to do a double crochet UK terms or single crochet US terms, which is where you don't do a yarn over, you just insert your hook into the space, bring a loop to the front, then yarn over and pull through 2 loops in one stitch and in this next stitch. Okay, now the next stitch is we're going to work 5 of these stitches into it. And it's where that join is. You can see there's a big hole there, and we've got these 2 ends we're going to be working over. So where that hole is, I'll work 5 stitches in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's actually making us go square. That's our first corner, really, our first full corner. This is half of the corner. This is the first full corner. And see, I've still got those ends behind. I'm still going to work over those and do the same thing we did before, which is a short stitch in the next 2. 1, 2. Now we're going to do 5 stitches in the next one again. So we're just repeating the same thing. 2 short stitches, 5 stitches, 2 short stitches, 5 stitches. I'll do that around to here, up to my next 2 stitches, and I'll show you how we join up. Okay, so here we are, back around. I've done my 5 stitches, 2 small stitches, 5 big, 2 small, 5 big. So now I'm up to 2 small. And you can see I've still got those ends to work over. I'm actually going to drop that shorter one now and just work over the long one. Yep. Okay. 2. Okay, so now we're back to the start. Now remember, we've been doing 5 stitches, and at the start we only did 3. So now we need to finish off our corner by doing 2 more in here. I'll explain why we're doing this in a moment. Two. Okay, now remember how we started with a full proper stitch? So now we're going to join up with a slip stitch underneath both of those 2 loops, just pulling the yarn through both. Okay. Okay, so now we're back around at the start again, and you can see we finished up in the middle of the 5 stitch corner, which is great because we're going to start working our way around from this corner position. So we chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and that takes the place of our first stitch because we're doing treble crochets UK or double crochets US. They're tall stitches and they're worked from the top down, so we need to get up to the top first. So now we're up the top, and that's our first stitch. The next step is to do a stitch in the next 6 stitches all the way across. So we're going to also crochet over the end from where we started our last round. Less ends to deal with later on, it's all good. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oops, 6. Okay, now we should be, the next stitch should be the third one in the middle of our 5 group, which it is. That's going to be where we're working our corner, which is, oh, sorry, 1 stitch, chain 2, and 1 stitch, another stitch in the same place as we just worked that last one. So that has made us turn the corner. So now we just have to repeat that all again. So a stitch in the next 6, a corner, a stitch in the next 6, a corner, a stitch in the next 6, and we finish off back here. I'll show you how we join up when we get there. Okay, so here we are back almost at the end again. I've just done a corner and 3 stitches, so I need to do 3 more stitches. This is 4, 5, 6. Now we need to create our corner like the other ones. Remember how we had a stitch, 2 chain and a stitch in the same space? Well, at the moment we started with a stitch, but we need to make another stitch in the same place that where we joined up to last time, which is, if you look down the base of that 3 chain, that's where we joined up to. That's where we're actually going to be making our stitch. So if you just go to the bottom of the chain and poke your hook in the same place. Okay, so now we've got 2 stitches in that corner. We just need to do 2 chain and join it with a slip stitch to the top of the third. So see that? That's 1 chain, 2 chain, 3 chain. That little loop there, we're just going to poke our hook in and bring that through there. Now, if this was the first square in your 10, you would cut the yarn off. But we're actually going to start, after you've done your first one, you can start joining into strips like this. So you have your strip, place it, the new one, so that the right sides are facing together and you've got the back showing. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a double crochet into this 2 chain space on the old one and into the 2 chain space we just made on the new one. Yarn to the front. We're doing short stitches. That's how we're going to join them. Okay, so that's a double crochet UK, single crochet US. And we're going to do that all the way along. So we've started in the corners. Now we go under the 2 loops on the top of the next stitch, and this one will be that big loop at the top of the 3 chain. We're going back into again. That's the first stitch on both sides. Now we go into the next one and the next one. So we're actually going under 4 loops at once. Pull a loop to the front, next stitch, next stitch. There should be 8 stitches in total, plus the 2 corners. So sorry, there's 10 stitches in total, plus there's 8 along the sides. So that's our one in the corner. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops, missed. 6, 7, 8. Last stitch of the side in stitches. 9. Now 10th stitch is actually in the 2 chain space and the 2 chain space of the other block. This is where we pull up a bit of a loop, snip, poke that through, and we have joined our first 2 stitches. Now while I'm still here, I've got the scissors. You can trim off those other ends left over from crocheting over, and that one. Just leave that one for now. Let's open it up and have a look. So there we go, all nicely joined. So once you have your 10 strips, you need to join the strips together. Now I'm just going to join these two to these two, pretend this is 10 and 10. So just like before, place them right sides together. This time we're going to have to attach yarn to our hook, again with a slip knot. And we're going to attach the yarn, okay, through the 2 chain space of both blocks. Same stitch, we're just doing exactly the same thing we just did, and now we're going to just crochet the 2 stitches together, the next 8 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now this is where it's still exactly the same as joining, but because we've already joined these 2 together, we've got this big join here. We're just going to ignore that for now. So we're going to poke our hook through the 2 chain space on each block. We're going to ignore the join, then we're going to find the 2 chain space on the next blocks. And if you come across any ends, here's one, we can crochet over that end as we go now. That's from joining the previous on one of the strips. Sorry, getting a bit tangled up. So through the 2 chain space, over any ends as you go. Okay, next go through the 8 stitches again. 1, just remember to crochet over any ends as you go that you can. It leaves less of them to sew in at the end. Oops, I missed the end. You always finish with stitches into the 2 chain space on either side, on each block. 2 more stitches to go here. Then in the 2 chain space. Okay, now I've actually run out of blocks, so I would continue on if I had more, but I've only done short strips here. So let's have a look how that looks. So there you go, the little blanket. Now to do, once you've joined all of your squares together, you can either leave it like that, or you can do a little bit of a border around the edge. I've left this one, but I'm going to show you how to do a little border around the edge on here if you wish. It's just very similar to the joining. I'll just snip off my... Sorry, I forgot to do that before. Okay, so there's only one small difference to our joining actually. So attach our yarn to our hook with a slip knot again. Now starting in one of the corners, pretend this is a big blanket, 10 by 10. Starting in one of the corners, do a double crochet or single crochet, sorry. And then in every stitch along, crocheting over any ends that you get to that are still hanging loose, do a double crochet or a single crochet, depending where you're from, in every stitch around. Now the only difference is when you get to the where you joined the blocks, we're actually going to do an extra stitch. You'll see why when I get to it. A couple more stitches. Okay, so now we do a stitch in our 2 chain space, just like normal. Now, you can see that the join there has actually added a bit of width. This join has added a bit of width to the blocks. If we just went over here and did another stitch, it's actually going to pull in on the sides of our blanket. So we actually need to do an extra stitch. And we do that in that join. Can you see those 2 loops hanging across? You just poke your hook in there. We've just created an extra stitch. Now we do one in the 2 chain space. And then a stitch in every stitch along. You see that's a much flatter, nice straighter edge. So you do that all the way around. When you get to the corners, I will show you what to do. Remember, crochet over as many ends as you can. In this case, because we've got a nice solid stitch, we can do this. If it was a lacier pattern, I would be recommending you didn't crochet over the ends, but in this case it will work fine. Okay, so now I'm pretending I've gone all the way around a blanket. I'm in a corner. We do 1 stitch in there, 2 chain, and another stitch. And that's all there is to it. You can do that all the way around. When you come back to the start here, remember we started just like on these blocks, we started with 1 stitch. So we're going to do 1 more stitch in here and then chain 2 and join up to that one. I'll show you what that looks like. I'll just work my way around a little bit. Okay, so pretending I've gone all the way around the blanket, I'm almost back to the beginning where I started my border. Okay, so I've done a stitch in every stitch, so now I'm back in the first corner. I'll do 1 stitch, chain 2, and join with a slip stitch to that very first one. There you go. So that gives a nice little neat edge to it compared to no edge. It's up to you which one you want to do. I like doing the extra edge, just sort of neatens out these little divots, but that's got its own charm as well. So there you go. You have everything you need to know now to make your very own Destiny blanket for your kids to snuggle under watching the Finding Dory DVD. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you with more things over on spincushions.com.